Yeah, my name is Anthony Lowe. I've been working in the litigation operations space for quite a few years now, a couple of decades. Seen a lot of different things. Started on the operations side as a director in that space, and then moved to the legal side. So I kind of did the reverse of what most lawyers would do, which is the opposite. So it's been a very interesting journey. Well, I mean, I think it first started with kind of the view towards performance management in business, which relies on data. The problem, though, when you begin to apply that to legal, is you don't have the data. So historically, when starting out, you really didn't have a lot of data to kind of feed the process, right? So it was difficult to have a data-driven process because you didn't have enough data, and the energy, the sheer energy in trying to create the data was, a whole new effort and expense that most legal departments were unprepared to take. So that was problematic. Fast forward to today. A lot of data is captured in the legal process from end to end. Almost everything we do. We're capturing machine data, we're capturing process data, we're capturing inputs from attorneys from various things and various tools that they're using. So there's a lot more data available. So it makes it much more realistic. Now, can we bring that together from a legal operations perspective, all of those different data points to really create a view that's important to stakeholders, whether it's the C-suite or a litigator trying to value their case or understand the importance of their case to the spend of the department, right? That's a really broad question. It's a great question. I mean, if I start out at the legal operations place, I can get pretty myopic. But, you know, metrics have to sit somewhere and they have to start somewhere. So I really like to think of it as starting with the business operation, the business model. What is the business model of the entity to do what it does? So if it's a company that makes money, so what is their business model? What's their revenue model? How do they operate? And they'll have, the business side is going to have some metrics around those things. It's going to have some metrics around their P&L, their expenses. It's going to have those things. So you want to make sure you know what those things are, because ideally you want to be able to feed some of those. If you want to be able to say my spend in the legal department impacts the bottom line, well, you better know what the metrics the business is counted for the bottom line and be able to read into those. So if your metrics are totally segregated and are different, well, now you've got an apples and an orange comparison. And when you go to the C-suite and you present to the finance guy your numbers, they're going to go, well, I need a whole another dictionary to do this. I know what mine's based on. The rest of the company's based on it. Well, legal, I need a better business case. Well, that's not where you want to be. So somewhere along the way, you can have additional metrics, but they need to feed somewhere into some of those corporate metrics. And that may mean you need to add some metrics as well, even on the corporate side, but as opposed like the legal department, in other words, when I say that. But you need to make that connection. Now, and I think for me, the next thing that I like to think about is a legal department, to an extent, serves the legal purpose that it conducts business for, right? So in other words, it's a law firm. Within a company, it's a law firm. And lawyers, right? And the work they do is critically important, and it's very expensive. And they're on the front lines, right? And they're also going to be making a lot of determinations about spend. Which cases, which motions, which things need to be settled, which jurisdictions. Okay, it's better we bring in this jurisdiction than that jurisdiction. And internationally, it only gets more complex. But the point is, your legal component, your lawyers, are incredibly important. So your KPIs need to kind of start with what is their needed input for their work? What do they need? Well, do they need, and we can kind of go down a list, but that's the point. So you want some metrics around that to feed into your operations metrics, because because that's going to give you some prioritization of your operations metrics. Which ones are really important? Okay, I'm spending a lot of time on a lot of different, or a lot of money and time perhaps too, in operations on a lot of different things. But which ones are the highest priority for the results the entire legal department's charged with delivering, right? And so it's not just running an operation for the sake of an operation. It is an operation with a mission, with a goal. And you want your KPIs all the way through to drive and be able to speak to that. So what are you doing now? You're really allowing, as we started, to talk to people in the C-suite, talk to your finance people. Now you can talk to your litigators, especially if you can take their data and begin to feed it through into APIs and count those APIs, right? Track, monitor, and show the variance, and show the trends, and show the possibilities, and show the gaps. And so, you can get pretty broad, right? But you kind of want to narrow it, in my mind, by the things that you're trying to deliver to the varied stakeholders that they're interested in. And what the CEO is interested in is probably something legal operations should reflect in some way. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a secret sauce. To me, the secret comes out of the business model and pulling those in. Because the ones that you've mentioned are, yes, those are typical. Everybody wants them. Everybody has them. But if you were really to push their business model metrics a little bit further, which may actually mean that you're driving into another cost center to look at their metrics, right? Because because their metrics on the business side are going to be prioritized, right, in terms of their contribution and probably their impact on the business model and on the P&L, right? And to the extent that they do that, they're going to have some metrics. And my whole view has always been, the legal department has to look at and often bring in the innovations, the metrics that are on the other side of the glass door in the business side. So you want to go over there and look. And if we think about it in terms of the evolution of even technology in the legal sphere, it started with just that, taking something that was already in the business and bringing it to the legal. To me, that's where a lot of the secrets are, right? You don't need to just make something up. You may find that you do, but if you do, it's because you started with what was already there and you brought that information together to see a trend, to see an impact, to say, I need to be counting that. I didn't see it before, but when I put these data points together, oh, now I see it, particularly now that you're sitting in legal, because that's where your innovation is going to come in, right? When you take what already exists in the business, see what's important, bring in those metrics, interpret them in a way that's impactful to you, as well as to those original stakeholders, and then come up with that third option that says, I need to be able to looking at these two things together, because when I look at those, I can actually translate into a dollar figure. I can translate that into a cost saving. I can translate that into a cost avoidance on something I need to mitigate. To me, that's it's not just a KPI, it's a process to get to KPIs that are insightful and impactful. I think that's exactly right. To me, if you're not doing that role, it's kind of hard to say you're a value add. You're a cost center.
Yeah.
But you want to be a value add. If you're saving money, or you're showing how money is wisely spent, or you're showing your contribution to the profit of a business, you are absolutely a value add, right? And I think for legal departments to justify their budgets, it's great to be a value add. And data gives us the ability to do that, and operations is uniquely qualified to be able to deliver. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of different vehicles in places that I've been to consume it. But a lot of that comes out of things that certain stakeholders want to see. So if you say, okay, my C-suite crowd, what do you want to see from the legal department? What is it? What kind of data points do you want to see? What kind of metrics do you want to see? What kind of reports do you want to see? What kind of impacts do you want to see? Every one of your audiences are going to have different answers to that question. To me, that's where you're starting with KPIs, right? Because you're going to build KPIs around what those stakeholders need to see. What do the lawyers need to see? And then you yourself, in terms of just a legal operations entity, what do you need to have? What do you think you need to have, right? And you're going to start out very baseline, and then you're going to get a little more sophisticated. But you got to start somewhere. To me, that's the biggest thing. You got to at least start. You don't have to be perfect, but you got to start. Right. You know, what would really like to see is that the metric inputs, the data, is all operationalized, right? So right now, very often in the organizations I've seen, different in what I'm doing now, which is different than operations in that regard. You're taking desperate information from this source and this source, and you're pulling it in when you can get it. So you're going to have gaps. It's not going to be a clear data flow. And then you're going to have that data in separate systems. You really want, ideally, if I had a wish, I want to be able to, it's almost like a data lake. I want all that information and be able to pull from that data lake. And I want to be able to put together pieces of information that don't look like they fit together and see what the result's going to be. And we know on the business side, they're doing this. And AI only makes it easier. But they're already doing it. So I want to do that on the legal side. That's my big wish. Because if I can get that wish, then that's going to allow me to innovate, both for the department and frankly, as an industry, right? Legal operations industry. And I think we're really close to that, but I don't see anything that's giving me the ability to pull all of those pieces together. It's a lot. There are a lot of pieces, and we don't own them, i.e. litigation or legal operations doesn't own the litigation metrics. But that input is absolutely critical, right? And same for many other, data points. We don't own them, but we need to be able to bring that in. All right, so how can I get that data feeding my systems or feeding a view and my ability to analyze that? Because my next piece onto that is, data science and data analysis is going to be more critical in the law, certainly than it's ever been. But it's also, I think, going to be so much more impactful on what it's going to be able to show in terms of the legal value and the legal impact on the business. But you must have the data scientists to do that. They, in operations, right? Because it's not been typical. Similarly for, the EDRM and e-discovery. Typically, we haven't had to rely on data science. We're at that point now. And it's only going to become more so. So I want the tools to look at and analyze and capture the data. I want the resources, right? The people with the right skill sets. And of course, then we're talking about process. How am I going to have those systems that bring in that information, analyze it in a way that's useful to my audiences? And I may have to figure out and how I'm going to communicate to them based on whatever's current at that time. But the point is, I got to develop a process on how am I going to use the information that we're routinely going to analyze and make it something that can be acted upon, make it actionable. And so, to me, those are the three things: people, process, tools. Find the gap and fill it. So when you start looking at anything, It could in anything. There's always going to be a need for something. Figure out the something you want to fulfill. And it may be something you're uniquely qualified to fulfill just because of your interest or your ability or your skill set. But fill it and fill it well. That would be my advice.